That seat is not available to me. Caleb Morgan stopped with his lunch tray balanced against one hand and looked at the empty chair beside the blue-skinned woman. Kepler Junction's food court was packed with the noon rush. Coffee dispensers hissed behind polished counters. Magnetic carts whispered between tables. Above them, ventilation fans pushed 72-degree air through steel grills while departure announcements rolled across the concourse in 6 languages. Every table within 30 feet was occupied, except table 42. Caleb looked at the chair again. Reserved. No. The alien woman's voice was quiet. Her silver-white hair framed a face that was beautiful but unmistakably non-human, with large violet eyes, narrow vertical pupils, elongated ears, and faint cyan markings sweeping across high cheekbones. Her faded transit coat looked as tired as she did. Caleb nodded toward the empty seat. Restricted? No. Broken? Her violet eyes narrowed slightly. It is a chair. Good. We agree on something. Caleb pulled it out. The woman's wristband immediately flashed red. She stiffened. Caleb froze halfway down. Okay, that seems important. She covered the band with her other hand. You should choose another table. Caleb glanced around. A family of 4 had just claimed the last open seats near the observation window. I'm seeing a shortage of alternatives. Then you should wait. Caleb looked at her. He had seen this woman before. Same table. Same gray coat. Same silent posture beneath the huge window overlooking the docking ring. 3 weeks, maybe. He had passed her on his way to lunch without ever asking why she was always alone. That realization made the tray in his hands feel strangely heavy. I am Caleb, he said, sitting down. Caleb Morgan. Power systems repair. She stared at him as though he had ignored a warning label. Naira. Nice to meet you, Naira. She did not answer. Caleb opened his lunch container. Turkey sandwich. Potato chips. An apple. Nothing impressive after 6 hours inside a power distribution crawlspace. He took one bite and noticed Naira's eyes move toward the sandwich before snapping back to the window. A second later, he heard the faint sound of her stomach. Naira lowered her gaze. Caleb looked at his sandwich, then at her empty side of the table. He cut it in half with the plastic cafeteria knife and slid one piece across the metal surface. Naira stared at it. What is this? Half a sandwich. I know what it is. That makes this easier. Her expression did not change. Why are you giving it to me? Caleb shrugged. Because I have a sandwich and you look hungry. The red light on her wristband blinked again. Naira did not reach for the food. Around them, hundreds of people kept moving. A cleaning drone rolled past table 42, paused for less than a second, then changed direction without servicing it. Caleb noticed. So did Naira. You should take it back, she whispered. Why? Because I cannot repay you. Caleb leaned back. I did not ask you to. Something flickered across her strange violet eyes. Not relief. Confusion. Maybe fear. Everyone asks for value in return. Not for lunch. Everything has value. Caleb pushed the sandwich another inch toward her. Maybe. But not everything is a transaction. For several seconds, Naira remained perfectly still. Then she picked up the sandwich with both hands and took one careful bite. Caleb looked away, giving her the privacy of not being watched. Outside the observation glass, a transport separated from Dock 12 and drifted toward the stars. When Caleb finally glanced back, Naira was staring at him. Her wristband was still flashing red. Human, she said softly. You do not understand what you just interrupted. Caleb looked toward the cleaning drone disappearing into the crowd, then at the empty chairs surrounding table 42. For the first time in 3 weeks, he wondered whether people had been ignoring Naira by choice at all. Caleb spent the rest of his shift thinking about a chair. That irritated him. He had 3 failing power regulators, a coolant pump drawing 9% above normal load, and a maintenance supervisor who believed every repair should have been completed yesterday. An empty cafeteria chair should not have followed him through 6 hours of work. Yet it did. At 4:26 in the afternoon, Caleb was inside junction C7 with both hands buried in an open distribution panel when he remembered the cleaning drone changing direction before reaching table 42. Machines did not improvise. They followed priorities. He tightened the final connector and watched the voltage settle into green. So what were you told to do? He murmured. The next morning, Caleb began noticing things he had ignored for weeks. Kepler Junction used an automated seating system during crowded hours. Small lights embedded along the floor suggested available tables based on passenger traffic. At noon, Caleb stood near the food court entrance and watched the guidance pattern. Green arrows directed passengers toward tables 38, 39, 41, then 43. 42 remained dark. A couple carrying lunch trays walked toward Naira's table, checked their wrist displays, then changed direction without ever looking closely at her. Nobody told them to leave. Nobody needed to. The station simply suggested somewhere else. Caleb felt an uncomfortable pressure behind his ribs. He had probably followed the same suggestion dozens of times. At 12:17, he bought 2 lunches. The cashier scanned them without comment. Caleb carried both to table 42. Naira was there. Her violet eyes dropped to the second container. Again, apparently, I eat every day. You know what I mean. Caleb sat. Her wristband flashed red once, then dimmed. I watched the seating system this morning. Naira became still. Why? Because yesterday a cleaning drone avoided this table like it owed money. That is not your concern. You keep saying things like that. Because you keep making them your concern. Caleb opened one container and pushed the other toward her. Chicken, rice, vegetables, and a dinner roll. Naira stared at it for several seconds before accepting. How long have you been sitting here? He asked. 22 days. And nobody has joined you. You did. Before me. Naira looked toward the observation glass. No. Caleb stopped eating. Hundreds of people passed this table every day. 22 days meant thousands of opportunities for someone to sit down. That is not normal. It became normal very quickly. Her answer landed harder than he expected. Caleb remembered his own routine. Enter food court. Check floor guidance. Follow green arrow. Eat. Return to work. He had seen Naira, but never stopped long enough to ask why she was always there. The system had not forced him to ignore her. It had only made ignoring her convenient. Does your wristband cause it? He asked. Naira covered the device instinctively. I do not know. Has anyone checked? I submitted assistance requests. And? Pending. For 22 days? Some are older. Caleb stared at her. Naira took another careful bite, then separated a small portion of food and wrapped it inside a napkin. Caleb noticed, but said nothing. Not yet. Instead, he looked across the food court. A service robot approached their table carrying water refills. At 8 feet away, its indicator changed from green to amber. The robot turned smoothly and served another table. Caleb watched it go. Naira kept her eyes on her meal. You saw that, he said. I stopped being surprised 2 weeks ago. Caleb looked down at the maintenance credentials glowing on his wrist. Power systems were his job, not customer routing. But every automated service on Kepler Junction left diagnostic traces somewhere. Tomorrow, Naira said quietly, you should sit somewhere else. Caleb looked at the untouched chair beside him, then at the robot disappearing into the crowd. Tomorrow, he said, I think I am going to find out why this table does not exist. Caleb did not investigate table 42 that morning. He tried. At 8:10, a power converter failed near dock 5. At 9:30, a freight elevator reported unstable voltage. By 11:45, Caleb had spent almost 4 hours inside maintenance corridors where the air smelled of warm metal and insulation resin. Kepler Junction had a talent for making curiosity wait. When he finally reached the food court, Naira was already sitting beneath the observation window. Caleb placed 2 lunch containers on the table. Her large violet eyes moved from the food to him. You returned. You sound disappointed. Concerned. That is almost friendly. One elongated ear shifted slightly. Caleb was beginning to recognize that movement as irritation. He opened his lunch. Naira did not open hers. Before I accept this again, we need to discuss repayment. Caleb paused with his fork halfway to the chicken. We already did. No, you avoided it. I am very talented. Caleb, her voice softened. Among the Ailen, food given during hardship creates obligation, not gratitude. Obligation. He set down the fork. What kind? The receiver must return equal value when able. Fine. Buy me lunch someday. Naira looked away. I cannot promise that. Then do not. Her gaze snapped back. You cannot dismiss a debt because repayment is inconvenient. I am not dismissing it because it is inconvenient. Caleb pushed her container closer. I am telling you there is no debt. Value does not disappear because you refuse to measure it. Around them, trays clattered. A coffee grinder buzzed. Beyond the glass, Sunlight slid across the silver hull of a departing transport. Caleb watched a human father tear a dinner roll in half and give the larger piece to his daughter. Neither child nor parent opened a ledger. Maybe value and kindness are not the same thing, he said. Naira stared at him. Explain. I cannot. Then your argument is poor. Caleb smiled. Probably. For several seconds, she studied his face as if searching for some hidden condition. Then she opened the container. They ate quietly. Halfway through the meal, Caleb noticed her separate a small portion of chicken and rice. She wrapped it carefully in a napkin and slipped it into the inner pocket of her transit coat. Exactly as she had yesterday. He wanted to ask. He did not. Trust, he decided, was probably another thing that stopped working when measured too aggressively. Instead, he tapped his wrist terminal. I checked the public service map. Naira's hand stopped. Table 42 is active. No reservation restrictions. No maintenance flags. Then there is nothing wrong. Something is wrong. You do not know that. The seating system skips you. Cleaning drones skip you. Yesterday, a water robot changed routes 8 feet from this table. Naira lowered her eyes. Perhaps machines dislike me. Machines do not dislike anybody. That is one of their better qualities. A tiny smile appeared, then vanished. Caleb continued. They do have priorities. The red indicator on Naira's identification band blinked once. Caleb saw it. This time she did not hide her wrist quickly enough. A small status projection flickered above the device before collapsing. He caught only 2 words. Service exception. What was that? Naira covered the band. Nothing useful. That looked useful. Please. The word stopped him. Caleb leaned back. All right. Naira seemed surprised that he actually stopped. She finished most of the meal, leaving only the portion already hidden in her coat. When she stood, Caleb remained seated. Thank you for the food, she said. Still no debt. We disagree. I can live with that. Naira walked toward the lower concourse. Caleb watched her disappear into the crowd. Then his maintenance terminal chimed. Not an alarm. A diagnostic notification. One of the food court service nodes had logged an unusual routing exception when Caleb's employee credential remained beside Naira's identification band for more than 20 minutes. Caleb opened the record. A single classification appeared beneath her anonymous service profile. Priority 0. He stared at it. Kepler Junction ranked everything. Emergency power came before decorative lighting. Medical shipments came before retail cargo. But Caleb had never seen a person assigned 0. He looked toward the corridor where Naira had vanished. The station had not forgotten her. It knew exactly who she was. It had simply decided that everyone else came first. Caleb spent the next morning trying to learn how a person became priority 0 without crossing a line he had no right to cross. His maintenance credentials could inspect service routing behavior, but they could not open Naira's private records, and he intended to keep it that way. Instead, he traced the machines. Kepler Junction recorded every automated decision for diagnostics. Seating guidance, cleaning routes, food delivery, transit assistance terminals. Caleb entered Naira's anonymous service classification and watched the pattern assemble itself across his screen. The result made his coffee go cold. She was not blocked from anything. That would have generated an error. She was deferred. A seating request placed her behind every standard passenger. A cleaning request associated with her location dropped beneath routine maintenance. A service kiosk encountering her profile processed other active users first. Even assistance queues treated her case as an exception with no guaranteed response time. Nothing said no. Everything said later. Caleb stared at the word until it stopped looking harmless. At 12:23, he found Naira at table 42. He sat down and placed lunch between them. Priority 0, he said. Her expression changed immediately. You found it. You knew? I knew the phrase. Nobody explained what it meant. Caleb opened his terminal and turned the diagnostic summary toward her. It means the station is not rejecting you. It is putting almost everyone else ahead of you. Naira read silently. The red light on her wristband blinked against her cyan skin. Why? There is a corporate dispute flag attached to your service profile. I cannot access the private record behind it. My former employer. Probably. She looked around the crowded food court. A cleaning drone moved toward table 42, detected their combined profiles, hesitated, then continued because Caleb's employee credential raised the table's service priority. Naira watched it approach for the first time. 23 days, she whispered. Nobody told me I was forbidden from anything. Because you were not. Caleb's jaw tightened. They just designed the system so you could wait forever without technically being denied. Naira looked at him. Machines did this. Machines followed instructions. That distinction matters to you. Caleb glanced at the service drone polishing the edge of their table. More than I would like. They ate quietly. Naira finished most of her meal, then wrapped the same small portion she always saved. Caleb noticed. This time another detail followed. The moment she stood, his terminal received a low-priority environmental notice from the lower service deck. Slight water consumption. Slight oxygen draw. A heat signature inside an unused equipment storage area. One biological occupant. Caleb looked at Naira's coat pocket. She saw where his eyes went. Do not follow me. I was not planning to. That is not convincing. I am working on it. Her violet eyes held his for a second. Then she left. Caleb waited until his shift sent him downstairs legitimately. At 3:40, a power relay near Service Deck 6 reported unstable output. He repaired it in 12 minutes. The environmental anomaly was only 90 feet away. Caleb stood in the corridor listening to ventilation move through old ducts. He could walk back to the elevator. He almost did. Then a voice came from the storage room ahead. Naira. Male. Older. Caleb stopped. The door opened several inches. An elderly Thulin man looked out, his blue-green skin lined with age, silver hair tied behind elongated ears. He held a napkin containing the food Caleb had bought at lunch. You are the human, the old man said. Caleb glanced at the food. I guess I am. She said you might become curious. She knows me pretty well for somebody who keeps telling me to mind my business. The old man's expression softened. My name is Oren. Caleb looked into the dim storage room. One blanket. One water container. One worn navigation jacket folded beside the wall. Naira has been feeding you. When she can. Caleb exhaled slowly. I thought there might be more people down here. Oren shook his head. Not here. Something about the answer caught Caleb. What does that mean? Oren looked toward the corridor, then at the small portion of food in his hand. It means you are still asking the wrong question. Caleb waited. Oren's violet eyes settled on him. Naira is not feeding only me. Caleb did not ask Oren for names. Not yet. He returned to the power relay, closed the service panel, and spent the next 2 hours thinking about one sentence. Naira is not feeding only me. At 6:10 that evening, he found her near a freight corridor almost half a mile from table 42. She carried no food now. Her faded transit coat was buttoned against the cooler air of the cargo ring, and fatigue showed in the way her shoulders lowered between steps. Caleb fell into pace beside her. Oren seems nice. Naira stopped. Her violet eyes narrowed. You followed me. I repaired a relay 90 feet from his door. And accidentally entered his storage room? He opened the door. Naira stared at him. Caleb raised both hands. I did not search anything. She resumed walking. Then forget what you saw. I can forget one room. Caleb followed. I am having trouble forgetting what he said. Her pace slowed. What did he say? That he is not the only one. Naira became silent. Around them, cargo loaders hummed beneath white industrial lights. Workers crossed overhead walkways while automated containers moved toward Dock 17. Nobody paid attention to the blue-skinned woman walking below. How many? Caleb asked. You cannot help them all. That was not the question. Naira looked toward the moving cargo. 17. Caleb stopped walking. She continued 3 steps before turning back. 17 people? Including me. Where? Different places. Naira lowered her voice. Oren stays near Service Deck 6. Mara sleeps in an unused crew module near Dock 9. Tal keeps his belongings behind a freight storage partition. Others move. Why separate? 17 people together become a problem someone notices. Caleb looked around the corridor. Apparently 17 people separated become no problem at all. Naira's expression tightened. He immediately regretted the sharpness in his voice. Sorry. Do not apologize for understanding. She started walking again. Caleb stayed beside her. Over the next 40 minutes, he saw what Naira had been doing while everyone thought she simply sat beside a cafeteria window. She checked on Oren. She delivered 2 sealed water packets to Mara. She left a piece of fruit inside a maintenance locker for someone working an informal cleaning shift. She walked nearly 2 miles through service corridors without once complaining. Every stop was small, quiet. Invisible. You have been doing this every day? Caleb asked. As much as I can. With one lunch. Sometimes there is more. Sometimes there is less. Naira did not answer. That answer was enough. The next morning, Caleb stood inside the employee market staring at a refrigerated wall of meal containers. 17 people. His weekly credit balance glowed on his wrist terminal. He could buy lunch for everyone once. Maybe twice if he skipped nearly everything else. Then what? Naira had been right. He could not feed them all. Caleb left the market with only 2 lunches. At noon, Naira saw the small bag and seemed almost relieved. You understand now. I understand food is not the problem. Hunger seems like a problem. It is. But it is not the first one. Caleb sat at table 42 and pulled a maintenance tablet from his tool case. Give me their names. Naira froze. Why? Because priority 0 is attached to people, not empty chairs. Caleb, I cannot fix 17 lives with sandwiches. He placed the tablet between them. But I can start by proving there are 17 lives. For a long moment, Naira did not move. Then she touched the screen. One name appeared. Oren Vale. Another. Mara Senator, then Tao Ren. Slowly, carefully, Naira entered the rest. 17 names filled the display. Caleb read every one. No numbers. No anonymous exceptions. Names. When Naira finished, her hand remained above the screen. What happens now? Caleb looked across the food court. The cleaning drone was approaching table 42 again. This time, because his employee credential was present, it did not turn away. Now, he said, we make it harder for the station to look somewhere else. Caleb did not start with station administration. He started with people who knew how Kepler Junction actually worked. At 7:20 the next morning, he found Marcy opening the cafeteria kitchen. She listened while he explained priority 0, then read the 17 names on his tablet twice. You want me to feed 17 people? She asked. No. I want to know what happens to food you cannot sell. Marcy pointed toward a disposal scanner. Sealed meals within safety limits can be redirected to approved assistance programs. Can these people use those programs? If they are priority 0? She shook her head. Probably not. Caleb tapped the list. Then that is one problem. By 9 o'clock, he was at Dock 9 speaking with cargo supervisor Daniel Price. Daniel had access to unused temporary crew bunks between freight rotations. I have 6 empty rooms this week, he said. Housing system assigns them automatically. And priority 0? Daniel frowned. Would never reach the top of the queue. Second problem. At 10:15, station medic Dr. Lena Park confirmed that emergency health evaluations could not legally be denied, regardless of service priority. She took 3 names. Daniel took 4. Marcy took 2. Caleb kept the rest. Nobody promised miracles. They simply agreed to look. At lunch, Caleb returned to table 42 with Naira. For the first time, she was not alone because Oren sat beside her. The old Delin looked uncomfortable beneath the bright cafeteria lights. His identification band flashed red every few minutes. Caleb placed a bowl of soup in front of him. Marcy says this was surplus. Oren looked toward the counter. Marcy pretended not to notice. No debt. Naira asked. You are never letting that go, are you? No. Over the next 2 days, the 17 names began moving through human hands instead of automated queues. Mara received a temporary bunk because Daniel manually documented an unused room as emergency accommodation. Oren received a medical evaluation because Dr. Park entered his case under universal emergency access. Marcy redirected sealed surplus meals before the disposal system could claim them. Small exceptions. Legal ones. Human ones. Then Caleb met Priya Shah, a station programmer who maintained service routing software. She studied the priority 0 diagnostic for less than a minute before her expression changed. This is not a system fault. Caleb leaned toward her terminal. You are sure? Very. Priya opened the classification history. Priority 0 can only be assigned through a verified administrative dispute flag. The automation did exactly what it was designed to do. Naira stood beside Caleb, silent. Who submitted the flag, he asked. Priya traced the authorization chain. A corporate identifier appeared. Vantage Interstellar Labor Services. Naira inhaled sharply. My employer. Priya opened the timestamp. The flag had been activated 26 days earlier, less than 48 hours before Vantage suspended operations at Kepler Junction. 17 profiles, Priya said. Same administrator. Same minute. Caleb felt the room become very quiet. Can you remove it? Not without authorization. But I can show you what it did. She expanded the routing history. Thousands of decisions filled the screen. Housing deferred. Food assistance deferred. Transit support deferred. Customer service deferred. Again. No direct refusals. Just 17 people repeatedly placed behind everyone else. Naira stared at the records. Why would Vantage do this? Caleb looked at the company identifier, then at the date operations had stopped. That is the next problem. His terminal chimed before anyone could speak. An automated station notice appeared. Service priority review initiated. Corporate dispute records requested. Priya looked at Caleb. Someone noticed the manual exceptions. Caleb thought of 17 names now appearing in housing, medical, food, and maintenance systems after weeks of silence. Good, he said. Naira turned toward him. Good. Caleb looked at the screen full of deferrals. We wanted the station to notice. Another notification appeared beneath the first. Administrative review. 17 flagged persons. Required attendance tomorrow, 8 a.m. Naira's wristband flashed red. This time, Caleb did not look away. Looks like it finally did. At 7:52 the next morning, 17 the Lin stood outside Administrative Review Room 3. Caleb counted them twice. He recognized Oren, Mara, Tao, and Naira. The others were faces he had only known as names on a tablet until now. Some carried worn travel bags. One held a sealed breakfast Marcy had packed before sunrise. Nobody spoke much. Through the corridor glass, Kepler Junction continued its morning routine as if nothing unusual was happening. Docking lights blinked. Service carts moved between gates. Thousands of passengers followed directions generated by the same station that had placed these 17 people last for nearly a month. Naira stood beside Caleb. You do not have to attend. The notice says supporting personnel may provide records. You repair power systems. Today I support records. Her violet eyes narrowed. That is a terrible explanation. I had 4 hours of sleep. The review room opened at exactly 8 o'clock. Inside, 3 administrators sat behind a curved desk. Priya was already there with a terminal containing the routing history. Daniel had submitted housing records. Dr. Park had documented emergency medical access. Marcy had provided food assistance rules. 17 names had become 17 trails of evidence. The lead administrator, a middle-aged human named Evelyn Ross, looked toward Naira. Your service profile indicates an unresolved contractual dispute with Vantage Interstellar Labor Services. Naira raised her wrist. The red indicator blinked. I have never been told what the dispute is. Ross opened the corporate record. Neither have we. Caleb leaned forward slightly. That was new. Priya brought up the authorization chain. Priority 0 was applied to all 17 profiles by the same verified corporate administrator. The station did not create the classification. It inherited it. Ross studied the screen. And the practical effect? Priya touched one control. A column of numbers appeared. In 26 days, these profiles accumulated more than 11,000 automated deferrals. The room went silent. Housing, food assistance, transit support, service queues, seating, cleaning. Thousands of tiny decisions. Caleb looked at Naira. She was staring at the number as if it represented 26 days she had finally been allowed to see. Ross frowned. Were services denied? Technically, no, Priya said. They were repeatedly deprioritized. For how long? Without manual intervention, indefinitely. Oren lowered his head. Caleb felt his hands tighten around the edge of his tablet. No villain had stood at a door and told these people they did not matter. That would have been easier to understand. A flag had done it quietly, one harmless-looking delay at a time. Ross turned to Caleb. Mr. Morgan, why did you begin manually intervening? Caleb glanced at Naira. He could have explained the seating algorithm, the cleaning drone, the diagnostic anomaly. Instead, he answered the first thing that had actually happened. She was hungry. Ross waited. That is all. That was enough. Naira looked at him, but said nothing. Ross returned to the corporate files. Vantage suspended local operations 2 days after assigning these flags. We need the contractual records that justified the classification. Priya's terminal chimed. A new archive response had arrived from the Interstellar Labor Registry. She opened it. Her expression changed. There was no contractual dispute filed. Ross looked up. Then what authorized priority 0? Priya scrolled through the metadata. A provisional asset status declaration. Caleb frowned. People were classified as assets. Contractual labor assets, Ross said carefully. It is an accounting category, not ownership. Priya kept reading. Vantage used it to freeze repatriation obligations while restructuring. Naira's voice was barely above a whisper. They made us wait so they would not have to send us home. Ross did not answer immediately. She did not need to. The timestamps answered for her. The 17 flags appeared first. Vantage suspended operations 46 hours later. The company had known exactly what would happen. Ross straightened. Priority 0 is suspended effective immediately pending full review. Naira's wristband blinked red once. Then amber. Then green. Around the room, 16 more bands changed with it. Nobody cheered. Oren simply stared at his wrist. Mara covered her mouth. Naira looked at Caleb as the green light reflected across her cyan fingers. Caleb smiled. Then Priya's terminal sounded again. She read the new message and looked toward Ross. There is more. Ross turned. Priya projected Vantage's regional records across the wall. Caleb saw rows of identifiers appearing beyond the 17 names. Dozens of them. Different stations. Different worlds. Same classification. Same priority 0. Naira's green light suddenly felt much smaller. Caleb stared at the expanding list. Kepler Junction had finally seen 17 people. Now it had to decide what to do about all the others. The regional list kept growing until Priya stopped the search at 83 names. Nobody in Administrative Review Room 3 spoke for several seconds. The wall display showed workers scattered across 7 stations, each attached to the same Vantage classification. Priority 0. Caleb looked at Naira. Her wristband was green now, but her expression had changed. Relief had lasted less than a minute. They are waiting too, she said. Evelyn Ross folded her hands on the desk. We do not know their current circumstances. The system does, Caleb said. Ross looked at him. Caleb pointed toward the records. That is the problem. It knows where their requests are. It knows how many times they were deferred. It knows which services kept putting them last. Priya understood immediately. She opened the regional routing archive. The numbers appeared one station at a time. Food assistance delayed. Temporary housing delayed. Transit support delayed. Medical scheduling delayed. Thousands more decisions. No dramatic rejection. No single moment anyone could point to and call cruelty. Just later. Again and again. Ross contacted the Regional Labor Authority while Priya prepared the evidence package. By 10:36, Kepler Junction suspended every Priority 0 classification originating from Vantage pending review. The station could not control other jurisdictions, but it could send the pattern, authorization records, and routing history to them. It did. Caleb expected something dramatic when the local change reached the network. Nothing happened at first. Then Naira's wrist terminal chimed. Assistance request active. Oren's band chimed next. Mara's followed. Across the room, green indicators appeared one after another. Caleb returned to work before noon because a power regulator near dock did not care about corporate misconduct. He was halfway inside an access panel when his terminal began receiving messages. Daniel had 6 temporary bunks approved. Dr. Park had scheduled evaluations for anyone who wanted one. Marcy had received authorization to redirect sealed surplus meals without the priority 0 restriction. Small things. Ordinary things. Things that should never have required Caleb. At 12:48, he reached the food court. Table 42 was occupied. Caleb stopped so abruptly that the worker behind him nearly walked into his tool case. Naira sat there with Oren and Mara. 2 other Thelin had pulled over chairs. Food covered the table. Not scraps. Not saved portions wrapped in napkins. Actual meals. A cleaning drone rolled toward them, polished the floor beneath the table, and continued without hesitation. Naira noticed Caleb watching. Are you going to stand there all afternoon? I was checking whether the chair was available. Her violet eyes softened. It is. Caleb sat. Marcy appeared long enough to place soup beside him. Surplus, she said. Of course. Around them, the food court remained noisy and indifferent in the best possible way. Nobody stared at the Thelin. Nobody redirected them. They were simply passengers eating lunch. Naira pushed a container toward Caleb. This one is yours. What do I owe you? Do not start. Caleb smiled and opened it. For a few minutes, they ate without discussing Vantage, algorithms, or 83 names. Then Naira's terminal chimed. She checked the message and became still. Caleb lowered his fork. Bad news. She turned the screen toward him. Transit support approved. Repatriation option available. Beneath it was a departure date 3 months away. Naira looked through the observation glass toward the ships moving beyond Kepler Junction. For 26 days, every system had told her to wait. Now, for the first time, the choice of whether to stay or leave belonged to her. Caleb said nothing. He had learned that silence could be a kind of respect. Naira finally looked back at him. 3 months. Caleb nodded. Plenty of lunches. She smiled. This time, nothing in the station looked away. 3 months later, Caleb arrived at table 42 and found Naira waiting with 2 lunches. The food court sounded exactly as it had the first day. Coffee dispensers hissed. Service carts whispered between tables. Departure announcements rolled beneath the high ceiling. Outside the observation glass, a silver transport rested at Dock 12 beneath the reflected blue curve of Earth. This time, Naira had a ticket for it. Caleb set down his tool case. You bought lunch. I did. With your own credits? Naira raised her wrist. The identification band glowed steady green. Employment status active. Transit status active. Financial account active. Would you like additional documentation? Caleb sat across from her. I am proud of you. You have learned sarcasm. I had an excellent teacher. Around them, Kepler Junction moved without avoiding table 42. The seating lights glowed green beneath its legs. A cleaning drone passed underneath, collected a fallen napkin, and continued toward the next table. Nobody noticed. That was the beautiful part. Oren had returned home 6 weeks earlier. Mara had accepted a navigation support position on Luna. Several of the other Lin had stayed on Kepler Junction after receiving valid work authorization. Regional investigators had suspended Vantage's Priority Zero classifications while reviewing the 83 affected workers. Caleb never learned every outcome. He was glad about that. 17 names had taught him something numbers never could. People deserved lives larger than the problem through which you first met them. Naira opened one lunch container. Inside was a turkey sandwich, an apple, and potato chips. Caleb looked at her. This seems familiar. Marcy provided instructions. Across the cafeteria, Marcy lifted one hand without turning around. Naira removed the sandwich and carefully cut it into 2 equal pieces. She placed one on Caleb's side of the table. He looked down at it, but did not immediately pick it up. Is this a debt? Naira's violet eyes held his. 3 months earlier, the question would have required rules, obligations, and calculations. Now she answered without hesitation. No. Caleb waited. Naira pushed the sandwich another inch toward him. It is lunch. He smiled and picked it up. For several minutes, they simply ate. No corporate records. No routing logs. No red warning lights. Just lunch. Then the departure board changed. Boarding, Dock 12. Naira looked toward the silver transport outside. Caleb noticed her fingers pause around the edge of her water bottle. You ready? He asked. No. Good. Her elongated ears shifted slightly. Why is that good? Means you are probably making a decision that matters. Naira considered this, then looked around the food court. Every chair at table 42 was technically available now. Every service system recognized her. Yet Caleb understood that none of those things explained why leaving felt difficult. Naira reached into her coat and placed a small folded paper on the table. The receipt from the first sandwich. Caleb stared at it. You kept that. The Lin preserve records of important obligations. I thought we settled this. We did. Then why keep the receipt? Naira touched the paper gently. Because I was wrong about what it recorded. Caleb waited. It does not show what I owe you, she said. It shows the day someone chose to see me. The boarding announcement sounded again. Naira stood. Caleb did too. Neither reached for a speech large enough to explain the last 3 months. There was not one. Naira picked up her travel bag and looked once more at table 42. Goodbye, Caleb Morgan. Safe trip, Naira. She walked toward Dock 12. This time, the floor guidance illuminated a clear green path ahead of her. Passengers moved around her naturally. Service machines recognized her presence. The station no longer placed her last. Caleb watched until she disappeared into the boarding corridor, then returned to the table. Half a sandwich remained on his tray. He ate it slowly beside the window. He had not changed the galaxy. He had only refused, once, to follow the convenient direction everyone else was given. Sometimes humanity was nothing more complicated than that. A chair pulled out, a meal divided in two, and one person deciding that another person would not remain invisible.